Hello and welcome back to 9Honey's Everyday Kitchen. I'm Jane de Graaff and today we are making Cheats cinnamon scrolls. Now I love this recipe because it's an extension of a recipe we've done once before, which was 2-ingredient flatbread, except I'm going to add a couple more ingredients today and make it into 4-ingredient cinnamon scrolls. You heard me, just 4 ingredients. What I love about this recipe is you don't have to do the rising, resting and the waiting for the yeast to activate, which you would usually have to do for cinnamon scrolls. This is a really simple, throw it all together, bung it in the oven, and by the time the kids get home from school, you have a treat that will delight them. So we're going to get started. What I have in my bowl here is 2 cups of self-raising flour, and I'm going to keep some aside for flouring the bench a little bit later on. And then to that, I'm going to add 2 cups of Greek yogurt. Go for the unsweetened kind because this is the base of our bread and you don't need to sweeten it yet. So I'm just going to pop that in with our 2 cups of self-raising flour. In we go. Now what I'm going to do now is bring that together with my fingers to make a dough. Then I'm going to roll it out flat and I'm going to add our other 2 ingredients, which are cinnamon sugar. Okay, cinnamon and sugar mixed together, 2 ingredients, but we'll pretend it's one. Cinnamon sugar and some lovely melted butter. We're going to paint that onto our dough a little bit later, sprinkle it with sugar, roll it up, and those will be our cinnamon scrolls. But first, we're going to make that dough. So what I'm going to do is use a knife to bring some of the flour into the yogurt just to get started and mix it together. Okay, that's all coming together quite nicely, and I don't think I can keep my fingers out of it any longer. So now is the time to bring it together with our fingers. So here we go. Now this is a really versatile dough, so if you're finding it too wet, you can add some more flour, and if you're finding it too dry, you can add some more yogurt. Don't worry about it too much. It is not a difficult or particularly fussy dough. All right, you can see that's come together really nicely and it's a nice sticky dough, which is what I'm looking for. So now I'm going to flour our bench, pop it out, give it a bit of extra work, and then we'll be ready to roll it out. Okay, now you don't have to be too precious with this dough. All you're really looking for here is for it to be a nice workable consistency so that you can roll it out flat to turn it into our lovely cinnamon scroll. So that's looking pretty good to me. Okay, so I've laid my dough out nice and flat, and what we're going to do now is roll it out into a rectangle so that we can decorate it with our cinnamon sugar. So get a bit more flour, make sure your bench is nicely covered. You don't want it sticking to the bench. Okay, so we want it into a bit of a rectangle, keeping the long edge towards you because it'll just make it easier for rolling in a little minute. And now comes the cinnamon sugar bit. What I've got here is my melted butter, and all I'm going to do is paint that all over my dough. Nice liberal painting. Painted that all over, and now we're going to take our cinnamon sugar and sprinkle it liberally all over our dough. Hot cinnamon, sugar and butter is such a welcoming smell for me. I grew up eating cinnamon toast for afternoon tea and this is next level. So now we're going to roll it up to make our cinnamon roll. So curl your edges over. And away you go. Ah, yes. All right. All right. Now, what we're going to do is take our roll and get a knife or a pastry cutter, anything that you've got on hand, and we're just going to cut it into lots of little cinnamon rolls. There we go. Okay, those are my cinnamon rolls, and what I have here is a baking dish that I have lined, and all I'm going to do now is take my rolls and pop them into the dish, snuggled up against one another. Don't worry if you lose some sugar, not a big deal. In it goes. this. Yes. Oh, if you could only smell that buttery, cinnamony goodness. Now you want them up against one another, but you don't need to push them together because they will puff out a little bit as they're baking. Nestle the baking paper around them to help stand them up. And that's going to go into a 180-degree oven for 20 to 25 minutes or until they're looking puffed and goldened and cooked. Puffy and fluffy and golden, look at that. I'm just going to pop them there for 1 minute because we're going to do one last final trick. You don't have to do this, this is completely optional, but this is some powdered sugar, some cinnamon, a little bit of vanilla and some milk, which I'm just going to whip up to make a quick glaze to put on top because everybody loves glaze on top of their beautiful cinnamon scrolls. So we'll just mix that all together. Now all you want to do is put enough milk into your powdered sugar to make it into a glaze that you're happy with the consistency of. So on that goes. Mix, mix. All right, there we go. That is our lovely cinnamon sugar drizzle to go on top. And all we're going to do now is drizzle that over our beautiful cinnamon scrolls. Yes. Drizzle, drizzle, drizzle. And now, the very last thing to do is to peel one off and see how they've cooked out in the middle. Let's grab this one here. Ooh, hot. Hot, hot, hot. Yes. Oh, yes. And buttery, cinnamony, fluffy. Oh, look at that. Beautiful. Oh, thank you so much for joining me for 9Honey's Everyday Kitchen Cheats Cinnamon Scroll recipe. Here we go. That is so good. I will see you next time.